Hi, I'm Gary Smith, a business attorney with Venn Law Group in Charlotte, North Carolina. Like most businesses, you've probably bought the business commercial package of insurance for property and liability coverage for your business. Now, you bought auto insurance and it pays if you have a car wreck. You bought life insurance and it pays somebody if you die. And you bought the business insurance and it does something. You look at the list of the coverages, you look at the deductibles, you looked at the premiums, you try to negotiate the premiums, but what's actually covered and not covered by your insurance? Well, I'm going to review what I've seen are the 5 biggest holes in most businesses' insurance. These are the holes that businesses really don't discover until they're told they aren't covered for a loss. Now, the first of these holes is pretty obvious. It's not knowing what coverage you actually have. Now, you have coverage that says for bodily injury. You have coverage that says for property damage. These are terms with specific definitions. There's a lot in your policy about what is not covered. And then there are all these endorsements added to it that say, yeah, but even though the policy says you aren't covered, you really are covered. Now, if you go to the insurance agent or the insurance company and you get a summary of what your coverage means, that summary typically only covers specific examples. What if there's a hurricane? What if there's a flood that happens every 1,000 years and it happens right now? What counts as a flood? What if a family of squirrels and a family of raccoons fight over who gets to live in the ceiling and chew all your wires? What about areas you think you're covered but really aren't? Now, most of the time you'll see products and completed operations coverage, for example, in your policy. That covers product liability, right? Wrong. You may also need product liability coverage. You probably should also have cyber insurance, and you may need insurance that's specific to your industry. Know what you've got. Now, quickly following on that, the second hole comes into what coverage can you actually get. You may go through the first hole and you've identified what coverage you need, but there may not be any insurance coverage to fill that hole. And if there is coverage, it may cost you too much when you look at the risk you're trying to cover. How can you be sure you know everything to ask and what coverages are available? For example, you're worried about or have had a customer who gets fraudulent payment instructions and they pay the fraudster instead of paying you. At one point in time, you could get insurance yourself that would cover your customer paying someone else. Well, that coverage no longer exists. Your customer has to have its own coverage for that situation because it's the one who was defrauded. Does your customer have that insurance? Are you going to and can you make your customer pay twice? To the fraudster and to you? Probably the answer is no. You've got to understand the coverage and you've got to understand what the coverage is you can have and who can have that coverage. Now, the third hole comes out of having too little or too much coverage. You may have signed contracts that require you to have certain insurance with certain minimum limits. They may have asked you to list them as additional insureds or loss payees. Do you have that insurance in place? Are you in breach of really important contracts because you don't have that coverage? Do you know what coverage is required by all the contracts you've signed? Do you know what insurance companies you can use for that insurance because those are typically limited? Who's going to find out? The same questions apply to the insurance coverage you require your vendors and customers to have. If you can't get coverage for a situation, can the vendor or customer get coverage? Have you been named an additional insured or a loss payee? Have you checked to see that the vendor or customer actually has the insurance in place? What have you agreed that your insurance company will do or not do in a contract that the insurance company actually won't agree to? The fourth hole is taking the easy route. All right, you've got the insurance coverage, and then they come and say, hey, you can also get umbrella coverage. All right, umbrella coverage covers everything, right? Because it's an umbrella. Wrong. Umbrella coverage typically increases the coverage that you've got, but it typically is just increasing the amount of the coverage. It's not increasing the type of your coverage. It may only be additional insurance to cover the areas you already have. If it doesn't fill the first two holes, and because it doesn't fill those holes, it most likely won't fill the third hole either, or this fourth hole. What's the fifth hole? The fifth hole is not understanding what liabilities your business have so that you don't insure against them at all. You might consider your business a B2B. You don't sell to consumers, you just sell to other businesses. But what if you're in a chain that's B to B to B to C? If the consumer is harmed, are you strictly liable, meaning you have to pay just because you're in the chain? If it's not your fault, do you have the ability to make other people in the chain pay? What have you agreed to indemnify other people for, and what have they agreed to indemnify you for? Now, indemnification is another topic we'll talk about later. You can go through the hundreds of pages of policies and endorsements and try to piece together what coverage and what holes exist for you. But you're trying to do something you haven't done before. Your only teacher is what you can find on the internet. Why put yourself through that stress when you can go to your attorney who already knows what to read and what issues to look for? Most states have required form policies and endorsements, so while each policy can be different in terms of coverage, the actual documents providing the coverage aren't different in that state. Your attorney should also know what risks exist for your business, even if you don't. At Venn Law Group, we can help you understand what coverage you have and what coverage you need. Contact us if you'd like to know what holes you may have.